Thanks, Tony, and thank Oberg Steel for putting this together, and CBIA for putting this together. I think this is extraordinarily important, and I thank all of you for attending. I also represent part of the town of Durham, which was added to my district last year. I've been at State Center since 2002, and I think Connecticut has dramatically changed since then, and not for the better. We obviously spend way too much money. We raise taxes. We've hurt businesses. We have not been business friendly, and everybody hears about not being business friendly. I am trained as a lawyer, but I also run a small business, a seasonal business. So I know what it's like to pay taxes and insurance and payroll and all those things that it takes to run a business. And I know how tough it is. And when people don't have money like they don't in the state of Connecticut, because we drain them every single time we raise taxes and raise sales tax, and we don't have the ability to control expenses, we hurt our economy. We have probably the best, most intelligent group of kids coming out of our school system, but they don't stay here. They move. They move for opportunity, they move for jobs, they move for investments, but they don't stay here. And it's sad. I have 3 kids. One who just got married, who's going to live in Florida, one who's in law school in Massachusetts, and the other one's going to school in South Carolina. You know, I'm not sure they're going to end up here. I know my oldest daughter just got married, is not. But we have to change the way the state is going. This is the great opportunity to do it. We have to make a commitment to our cities. We have to make a strong commitment to our urban. That doesn't mean just throw money at them. It means creating opportunities. It creates a structure. Create a way to get that population of our inner cities jobs and opportunity and a workforce. State of Connecticut can only go forward if our cities lead the way. And we need to do that, not by throwing money, but a structured program. And that's what I think is another big lacking aspect. So, and I don't have an opponent, so I can't talk much about the campaign.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much, man. No opponent, you're still here. That's what makes you a good legislator. Appreciate it. Okay, representing the 85th district in Wallingford is Frank Apuzzo, Republican candidate, sort of a new guy on the block, but we've known Frank for a long time. So, Frank, you got the floor.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And thank you, Oberg Steel, for having us here and the chambers and CBIA. Many of you know that I've been involved in most of the chambers for quite some time. I've sat on the boards for the Quinnipiac Chamber and the New Haven Chamber. And I've been involved in the business community for a long time. And this is the reason why I'm running. I'm disappointed in where the direction of Connecticut is going. We have a huge spending problem, and it needs to be curbed. We've been a one-party rule for 30 years, and it's like they have a blank check. They have a huge spending problem. And that's why I'm running as a candidate. Create jobs, run and help the economy. And I apologize that I'm a little nervous. This is a new forum for me. You know, I've been an insurance broker for a long time, and it's easier for me to talk about insurance in front of most of us. But doing this, especially among some very familiar faces, is kind of difficult. You know, we have had some problems in Connecticut. We're picking winners and losers with our First 5 program, keeping companies in Connecticut that we're going to leave. I don't understand why we're picking these winners and losers. Or we could just lower our tax base and create and foster a better business environment for people to want to be here. And we spend $650 million on a 9.4-mile stretch of highway or busway when we could have improved 95 to move commerce back and forth. These are problems that Hartford has that when I get there, I'd like to try to solve. And that's why I'm running. The campaign is going well. I've been knocking on a lot of doors. Wallingford just had to celebrate Wallingford the other day, which was great. We got rained out on Saturday, but Sunday I was hustling up and down that street. I probably walked 9.4 miles.
Thank you.
No, thank
Appreciate
you.
it very much, Frank, for you being here. It's now my pleasure to introduce State Representative Vincent Candelora. He's a Republican, running in the 86th district, representing Durham, North Branford, and Wallingford. Good evening. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. In addition, I also represent North Guilford as well. The district's changed, and so I now have 4 towns, which is a challenge, but it is a pleasure to represent those communities. I live in North Branford. I have 3 children. My family, we run a manufacturing business in North Branford as well as a sports complex, indoor, outdoor. So we sort of see both sides of the economy. And I'm running it for my 5th term. I do not have an opponent, but nonetheless, I think it's important to get out here into the community and let people know how we feel. I certainly echo the sentiments of my previous speakers. Frank's point about picking winners and losers certainly is what we've seen over the last few years up in Hartford, and it's dangerous. The losers move out of our communities, the winners stick around and have been subsidized with tax dollars that ultimately ends up hitting our pocketbooks. One of the issues that I've tried to champion, and we were successful in getting legislation passed, and I think all of you should pay attention to this, is a tax incident study. In the upcoming cycle, we are looking at all of our taxes in Connecticut and hopefully how Connecticut become more competitive. One of my concerns is that in analyzing our taxes, as we've seen time and again, certainly working with CBIA, they've always been a champion of this, is making sure that we don't get rid of or attack the important tax credits that businesses benefit from. One of the things that we're now beginning to study, though, is our income volatility and looking at the peaks and valleys and the way our income comes into the state of Connecticut. Because I truly believe that is why Connecticut has had an exacerbated spending problem. We get a lot of money out of the stock market when it performs well. It allows us to have 10% growth in our budget, which is obscene. When the stock market underperforms, we see a huge decline, and we have a bigger hole to make up than any other state in the country. And so I'm hopeful that this committee, it's not made up of any legislators, so which is good. It's all people in the communities, a lot of tax attorneys, but they're going to be looking at these issues. And I think it's all important for all of us to pay attention to it, to make sure that we stop the business of picking winners and losers, and let's start looking at fundamentally why we have a spending problem, why we see massive budget deficits, correct those areas so that we can have a more stable Connecticut, so businesses will want to stay here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. It's now my pleasure to introduce Alden Mead. He's a Democratic candidate running in the 87th district, representing Hamden and North Haven. Alden's another newcomer to the political scene, but not a newcomer to the area, so welcome.
Thank you. As you know, my name's Alden Mead. I'm the only one here from the other party. And I'm also new to politics, so it's a little daunting. However, I could tell you my own background, and I really am not someone who has a philosophy from one side of the aisle or the other. I have a more pragmatic view from having run a very successful small business and growing it. But my background is, after the Army and a few other things, I worked in both governmental and non-governmental large groups, one of them being Orbis International, which was a large charity where I worked for 2 years setting up little eye hospitals around the world and making sure that in places like Mongolia, Ethiopia, India, they could set up a viable economic system to take care of patients as a small business in a small area, usually sometimes villages and cities. And so that was one of the things I did. And I also was in charge of what would be called technology resources for them. We had a DC-10 flying eye hospital, so I was in charge of that airplane and took it to countries where the airport was big enough for it to land. That was one aspect of my life. Another was, prior to that actually, I was about 23 years at Yale University at the medical school, where I ran a number of the laboratories and ran them as a business, but I also did basic science research, and so I have a kind of eclectic background in that way. During that time, I went to law school. But more recently, and maybe of more interest to you, is I was a CEO for the last 12 years or so, and I stepped down from that position, not to run for political office, but it's convenient that I did. I just happened to have this time and thought that I fitted this potential position. But I ran that company, and so I really know things from exactly where you're coming from. In fact, our company was a member of CBIA and all the chambers, and you probably all know Robbie Jewell Giuliano, who worked for me doing the liaison with the chambers. And so I know the costs of doing business, and I know the encumbrances that are imposed both governmentally and just by the environment that you're doing business in the economy. And so I think that I come from a background where I can really kind of cut across perhaps philosophical views to pragmatic views, the same as most of you may have. And I know the main expenses to me as a business is when I look at the QuickBooks and I look at the accounting, I think what costs me the most and where am I getting the least return. And it's the payroll, and it's the medical insurance, it's the other insurances, obviously it's energy. And so I think those all steer me to where I look to be an independent person looking at what can be done within the state. And so that's my perspective. I took a little note because, of course, I looked up Ulbrich Steel, and I knew something about them anyway. And I love that I think they run this company exactly as we developed the company I was in. We went from about 35 to about 85 to 90 employees. And we went from 1 town to 5 towns. It was an ophthalmology medical practice. And I loved when I saw Ulbrich Steel had total company involvement, which was huge. And that's how come we grew, and we grew with quality people, which we did find in Connecticut. Obviously, I have a little different point of view of the direction that the state goes in and how it should get there, and how the position it found itself in order to maneuver to where it has to be. And I think it's just common sense and all the things that you all understand that can get us there. But I thought this company here, Ulbrich Steel, is great because they said everything. Total company involvement, total responsibility to the customer, and total quality commitment. And I have to say, I felt we grew a great business. The employees loved it. They whistled while they worked. It was not unionized. It was small. But the union was really in concert with the patients and with the owners and with the employees. And I think that can be done anywhere. I will say, when we talk about rankings here, and this is my last comment, is I think rankings, of course, can vary, and it depends on how you market yourself, how you rank, but there are some very real issues. For example, it's not really so much perhaps even the level of taxation sometimes in Connecticut for corporations, but it seems like it's the difficulty of getting through the system of compliance and regulation, that when you look at surveys of what bothers people, it seems like the greatest complaint they have is not even the money. When I look at the money that goes to the government compared to what goes to other private industries that we work together with, it's the problem of having to get through the regulatory system in Connecticut that I do find difficult, and I think it could improve. Anyway, thanks so much.
Thank you, Alden. You sure you're not Republican?
Like I say, I'm pragmatic.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Dave Yaccarino, a Republican running in the 87th District, representing Hamden and North Haven. Dave?
Thank you, Tony. Just North Haven, and thank you for all being here. And thanks Ulbrich Steel and the Chamber. I'm Dave Yaccarino. I've been the state rep for almost 4 years, representing North Haven, Connecticut. And in the last 4 years, I've seen the largest tax increase that affects all of us in Connecticut and North Haven of $2.9 billion, which affects jobs. I've visited many companies over the last 4 years, and the biggest problem that what we see is the regulatory system. I was trying to read through the regulatory system last night, and it's very cumbersome. We need to continue to work on that. As far as, excuse me, myself, I've raised 3 children with a long-term mom, Dave, Joe, and Carolyn, and I've had a small business in North Haven for 24 years. So I understand the unemployment, the liability, the compensation that all small businesses and large businesses have to so that's a challenge we have to face. But back to companies, manufacturing, like Ulbrich's a great manufacturing company. We need to really focus on manufacturing. They're high-paying, clean jobs. And we've tried to focus over the last 4 years. So it's jobs, to taxes, we've had a lot. I don't know why this. But we have to really look at how we have jobs. I go around visiting a lot of homeless shelters, and Connecticut has the highest population of homelessness and poverty in the country. So it's how we approach government and how we work together as both parties, Republicans and Democrats. We have to be pragmatic and work hard together to have a strong future for Connecticut. We haven't done that over the last 4 years. We've had a one-party rule. It is not to be partisan, that we really need to pull together and work together as Democrats and Republicans, as Connecticut citizens. So I'm an advocate of that. Listening to CBIA, listening to local businesses, we have to continue to work hard and stress that. We have also the highest gasoline tax in all of New England by 22 cents a gallon, which affects working poor, people driving to work, companies that have to have budgets. So those are all things that affect us. We have to look at that. I put a bill in last year to study the sunset, to study why is our gas tax so much higher than every other New England state by 18 and 22 cents. Those are important things. Those are things that we have to deal with every day with regular people working and going to work. So we have to look at all these taxes over the regulatory system. We have the second highest energy tax in the country, and our tax will be lowering, our energy costs will be lowering, going down the next 3 years when the Algonquin gas line comes through New England to Connecticut. But it's going through that regulatory process, trying to, instead of jumping through hoops, but actually getting to that point. But we have to work together, and it's been very difficult the last 4 years that we've had one party.
Thank you, Dave. I want to welcome Mary Mushinksy, who represents the Wallingford area in District 85, this afternoon. Mary, you're up last here. Everybody got there.
Good timing. My name is Mary Mushinksy. I represent the central part of Wallingford, and I co-chair the Program Review and Investigations Committee, which is a long mouthful, but basically what my committee does, it's a bipartisan committee. I'm a Democrat. My Republican co-chair is my partner, Senator John Kissel, and we have an evenly divided committee, 6 Democrats, 6 Republicans. And what our committee does is look at state agencies, look at state programs, investigate new things that are coming down the pipe that we need to regulate. And for example, on Wednesday we're doing drones, because there aren't any laws on drones yet in Connecticut, and they're starting to become a problem, although they have great promise as well. And we come up with, we look at an issue for 6 months, and then we come up with recommendations for how the state can do it better. And because it is a bipartisan committee, people tend to trust us, and they tend to take our recommendations. We also are asked to do budget cutting suggestions, and the last budget go-around, we came up with $400 million worth of suggested ways to do that, to save money for the state, and passed it on to the Appropriations Committee. So that's really our job, we're an efficiency group, and that's my main responsibility at the legislature.
Thank you. So once again, we want to make sure folks